Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Corbett. I play the accordion and I was delighted to be asked by the Hebrides Ensemble to play a few concerts with them centering around the chamber music of Rebecca Saunders. The project was meant to take place this week, but obviously that's not possible, so in its absence, I'd like to talk a little bit about preparing and performing Saunders' music and also her approach to writing for the accordion, an instrument that you maybe don't hear so often in this context. So, as you can imagine, with such a flexible instrument, there are many ways of playing it, and also a vast array of extended techniques that have been invented, sometimes by the performers, but very often it's the composers who are a catalyst for the creation of new techniques. At times, the composer will have an idea or a desire for a particular sonic effect that the performer doesn't know how to create. With a bit of perseverance and collaboration, they find a way of achieving the sound, and consequently, a new extended technique is created. It's very clear that Saunders worked together with an accordionist when she wrote these pieces. There's almost a full page of highly detailed explanatory notes at the start of each piece just for the accordion, and it's evident that she considered the instrument as if for the very first time. I mean, she's really made it her own, her sounds, her way of writing for the instrument, and I think that's an approach that she uses with all of the instruments. I mean, as a composer, she's involved in the kind of complete performance. Sometimes her music follows a kind of choreography, sometimes there are theatrical elements, and she really creates extreme contrasts across all parameters and is interested in the essential materiality and weight of the sound. Another important aspect in her music is the physical gesture and movements of the performers. She's fascinated by the physicality of the performance situation. So, in a way, it's very visual. And I think the accordion has a fairly similar role in both of these pieces. The quartet, which is written for clarinet, accordion, piano, and double bass, and that's a piece which really takes impact and tension to the extremes. And the Fury 2, which is a concerto for double bass and ensemble made up of bass clarinet, percussion, accordion, piano, and cello. When talking about the bass concerto, Rebecca Saunders said that really the most important instrument in this piece is the accordion, because it's quite an exceptional instrument in that it creates a kind of invisible timbral transition between all kinds of diverse and extremely differentiating instruments. If we take the resonances of the tam tam, hit perhaps through the central zone and the chain hanging over it, and it's only hit mezzo piano, the chain is rattling, you've got the low resonance, and the accordion can just pick up those sounds. You could give it a very high chromatic cluster, it picks it up like a drone, and you actually think, is that still the tam tam? But it's not, and then it just sits there, and all you have to do is give it a tiny bit of vibrato, and suddenly your ear identifies that it's another sound, and then you can take that sound to another instrument. So you can use that instrument to almost teleport sounds from one instrument to another. End of quotation. Because all these instruments are so kind of interconnected in our writing, I think that as a performer, you can only do so much in preparation. It's only once you start playing the piece complete as a group that things really start to make sense. I'll now show you a few of the extended techniques that Saunders uses in these pieces, starting with the very start of Fury 2, the double bass concerto. So it's a very quiet opening. The accordion actually starts from absolutely nothing on the very lowest note, and then the pitch is bent to even flatter than the lowest note. So I'll just show you. And a little bit further on in that Fury, she uses the air button, which is generally used for opening and closing the bellows without making a sound, but she has a sforzando on it, so it's actually quite a kind of interesting effect. A little bit further on, she plays around with the kind of bisonoric qualities of the instrument, with playing the same note in both hands, but in the right hand you bend the pitch a little bit so you get the beats playing around. That bending of the note is actually the very last thing the accordion plays in this piece, but very low down. I mentioned in her speech about the accordion that she had the chain and the tam-tam that merged into the accordion sound, and there's actually a note in the score here that says out of high percussion, and that's just before a cluster very high up using the piccolo reed, which sounds something like this. In the quartet, Saunders actually starts the piece off with what could be a gesture of closure. She actually instructs the pianist to slam the key lid shut with the sustain pedal down, so you get a huge smack with a wood on wood sound, and then the strings inside resonate. The accordion then comes in straight after with a cluster in the bass, and then a chromatic glissando thinning out to one note in the right hand. Another extended technique in the quartet is vibrato, and Saunders actually asks for this in 4 different types. You have the left hand vibrato, left arm vibrato, which is a little bit more vigorous. There is right hand finger vibrato, which I've personally not done much before, as you can probably tell. And there's also leg vibrato. So if you're playing notes, for example, in both hands, then you can use the leg to vibrate the instrument a little bit. Shortly after that, she asks for a chromatic cluster bellow shake deep down in the bass. It's marked very quiet, and she's written very dark and barely audible. There's another type of bellow shake used in this piece called the ricochet, and that's where you hit it off the tops and bottom of the instrument. That should sound something like... That was of course a ricochet with 3 notes, but Saunders also asks for a 4-note ricochet where you lift the right hand as well. And last but not least is this great technique that Saunders uses, where you press the register on the chin and also with your finger, so you get a sound halfway between 2 registers, and that leaves one of the valves a little bit closed, so it's a little bit out of tune. And she combines this effect with a pitch bend, which gives you this effect. So that's the end of my little talk. Thank you very much for watching, and I really hope that in the not too distant future you'll be able to hear this music live.